since the fall of 2009. I have been feeding her because even with interns, if you walk in there, and there's still penguins that don't really like me. Simon will say hello to me, and that's about as much as he will do. And he says hello, and he does it by kind of rotating his head and shaking it and kind of doing these funny little motions, and that's kind of hello. I get too close, though, it's like, back away. I'm only saying hello. I'm not saying much more than that. She will do contact calls with me, so when I walk out there in the morning, if she sees me, she'll kind of make a little noise, and if I say hello, someone will respond. And it's just kind of saying, check it out, I made it through the night. And they all will do that in the morning when they first wake up. There'll be a lot of contact calls, and that's basically just a way of kind of, reaffirming your bond, but also saying, we survived the night, isn't it great, kind of thing, and I'm so glad to see you, kind of thing. Yeah, we're just playing right now, though. I also played with her.
Wouldn't they go for feeding more naturally over the whole time span if they're out awake? You know, they have a certain time they sleep on?
I think they do sleep a little more at night, but at the same time, they spend a lot of time in the water. I want to say it's something about 80% of their lifetime they are out in the water because they are trying to find food. With overfishing and whatnot, and also just the way the currents are, they have to go a little bit further so they can sleep in the water. They can sleep standing up, they can sleep on their belly, they can sleep floating in the water. And so obviously our feeding schedule is more for our kind of to spread out their food throughout the day so they can get the most food that they can have, and just so they aren't too full. But because they self-regulate out there. After they've had enough, they walk away. She's one of the ones, because some of our juveniles will hang out still, and so once you fed them, and they're maybe full, but they'll still stay by the feeding bucket and just kind of hello, and not really, but they aren't really hungry anymore. In the wild, though, they can spend days out in the water. And then they'll come back. They do co-parent, so it is shared. Mom and dad both deal with babies and incubating and all that. So they do kind of share the process. Sydney, I'll leave you guys with one story because it is actually, and then we can do a walkthrough as we go out. Sydney, for one of our enrichment, we do toys also. We'll toss toys in there. We have shiny bouncy balls, and they all are really fun because they all just go like that. We put in rubber duckies in the pool just to see what they would do. Sid took them out, put them in a corner, and decided those were his babies, and he was going to sit on them, and she was joining him because she's his mate. And so he would sit, and he wouldn't leave his nest of rubber ducky babies. And so we kind of let him do it for a while, but obviously a rubber ducky baby is never going to hatch. So eventually, when he finally started to let us go a little bit closer, we grabbed him. And he was fine, he recovered, but still, it was kind of a cute thing that he was kind of, I'm ready, but unfortunately he's probably not going to be able to have babies, but that's okay.
What preys on them most? Seals or something?
Seals, sharks, orcas, seals, sea lions.
What's the life expectancy here versus wild?
So wild is 10 to 15, and that's a good kind of, if you really make it, whereas here it's anywhere from 20 to 30. All you can eat in veterinary care is a pretty good deal. So
Nice buffet.
they have it pretty nice. I know, this is just fun to play with. So I can do this. Can we get your sweet spot? Probably not. You're too interested in my keys. She lets me preen her because I have been hanging out with her, and so in her, Sydney will do this too, and he will preen her, and she will preen me, which as though it's very nice. It involves her kind of preening my hand. Sometimes they kind of will nip a little bit, but she's really fun because she has actually a little sweet spot up on her head when she's comfortable. There it is. And she preens the air for it. Yeah, that's the same spot, isn't it? It's fun because actually I've seen Sid do it too, and he's managed to get her sweet spot, and she sits there and preens the air. So on you guys' way out, because I do want you to be able to see everything else. Yes?
How many babies have we had here?
0. We have not had any babies yet because most of them are really young actually. Stanley's our oldest, he's 9. Stan and Patrick have tried, but because they are not one of those recommended pairs, we've not let them. Also, it's not a guarantee that every egg laid is going to be fertile. So we always do check, but at the same time, just with them, because they aren't one of the recommended pairs, we do just replace them with dummy eggs. So, and Owen and Kristen they are old enough now to be able to do it. In about the same way that a teenager is old enough to have a baby. So yes, they could totally have it, and they could be completely fine parents if they were to have it, but they are still a little young, and so whether we get one this season or it might actually be waiting until next year. But they have, it's helped. She was back with them. It was a little crowded in there at times. She was really funny because you'd go to feed her and she'd be like running to the door, kind of, let me out of here, I want to come out. And so they are now back by themselves, and we are hoping that kind of just being by themselves and having it be a little more routine and not having to have people coming back there to get her to do medical will kind of make it a little easier, and hopefully they will maybe, and they can do it any time of year, honestly. Patrick laid a nest last fall, and then she just did one recently. So it can happen throughout the year. I think generally it is kind of closer to the spring, but there is information on one of the boards about what time of year they normally do. But because it is a zoo, it does change the conditions a little bit just because they have food all the time. It's not really as much of the cycle.
What kind of medical condition are you treating them?
So with a penguin, a lot of birds are susceptible to aspergillus, which is a kind of mold that can get in their lungs. And so that was, I think for her, we had to do that. And so she was getting basically nebulized. She had to have basically a treatment that helps get down to the lungs, and so she had to be nebulized a couple times a day. You're not jumping. And I think Stan was the same. And so we do preventative treatment, but because they needed to have that nebulizing treatment, I think twice a day, we had to keep them back there just to make it easier. But they get regular checkups, they get vaccinations. We have an on-site vet staff who live in the building over by the parking lot, and they are great because it gets us we have a really nice care, and they're obviously just devoted to birds, so they know our birds pretty well. Any others? Okay, so as you guys leave, if you want to, what we can do is if you want to get a closer view, especially for people who are kind of back there, if you kind of want to file in front, I don't want to get too close to the table, obviously, no hands. Hands are fun to play with and could potentially be bitten, and that is not fun if she really decides to bite you. She has not been biting me at all, actually. I know you've seen her playing, but that is not biting. If they are very angry, and it's funny because our penguins just learned this in the last year, we wear like coveralls, we wear boots and coveralls when we go out in there because there's a lot of spraying of stuff and you don't want that spraying on you. So with those, we wear the special outfits to kind of keep the penguin exhibit in the penguin exhibit. And they didn't really know where, because you can't see where the boots end and the cover, and then you're like blank. Other facilities, we'd heard of it though, where the penguins have figured out where the boot ends. And if they don't like you, they knew that was the perfect spot to go and jab you and try to bite you and give you a nice big pinch. And our penguins just learned this in the past year because they weren't doing it last year when I was here. And then when I came back recently, they managed to, ooh, boots there. I go a little bit higher and I pinch there. Because if they don't like you, they're very verbal about telling you with their body language, usually kind of saying, no, I don't like you that much. Is that fun? Yes. Okay, so as we leave, if you guys want to kind of come up and you can kind of get a little closer view, because they're really, you don't get to see a penguin that close very often, so it's kind of neat to see how the feathers overlap, because they do have a ton of feathers, but you can't even see it sometimes because you're far away. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask.
What are you doing to socialize him? Because I do know that they just took him out. Do you do something to help socialize them so that they accept you more?
So we also will feed, we'll help out with the penguin exhibit, working with them helps. And that's part of the way of how I was able to really kind of work with her, was because I'd be in there cleaning with those overalls, and because I'm short, I had to have the straps really high, and they'd have stuff hanging over, and she and her brother would just be like, I am playing with those straps hanging. So playing with her kind of helped her encourage bonding. She's also a kind of a bit of a nicer penguin. Elvis, you handle. And so we have a couple people who are learning penguins right now, and so we kind of bring them into a room with no one else, and just that person, a person that penguin you will work with, and penguin, and they get to interact with them and play with them, and sometimes help feed to help kind of encourage that bond. But ultimately, it is up to that penguin. So I can work with her. I can do Sydney. I'm one of the few actually that Sid will kind of tolerate, and Elvis. And I can do some of the others. I can handle them, but I'm not as comfortable. They're not as comfortable with me. So you kind of are limited to who your penguin, which penguins have decided you're okay. She used to be so comfortable with me that she would bray with me, but because I actually was at a different facility for about 8 months, and then came back to the aviary to do another internship. In that time period, our relationship kind of downgraded a little bit just because I was gone. So she won't bray for me anymore because she used to be kind of bonded enough that if I were to kind of get up close, can we do it? I don't know. Can we try it? Would you try it? I know my hair is down and it's never down. Can we try it? No, I can't do it, can I? You're just not going to do it. Yeah, she has to be in the mood. She's really not telling me right now that I'm even thinking about braying. But you'll see them kind of arching the head, and that's kind of, oh, hello, and they'll do a very specific kind of little waddle over to you and stuff. And they'll make funny little kind of breathing, and it's just a kind of thing before they actually will go into the braying. But usually, especially after that feeding, I tend to hear a lot of it, because all the penguins, they're all nice and comfortably fed and stuff, and then it's kind of find your other pair and make some noise and kind of just say, check us out, we are wonderful. And so you should be able to hear it probably after the feeding. But, okay, any other questions? Otherwise, we can come on.
Do they molt?
They do. I didn't even touch on that. They do. So all birds kind of molt, like we lose hair gradually. We replace our hair. Well, like some of us will kind of lose hair and gradually replace it and whatnot. And birds will do that too. They'll lose a couple feathers at a time. It's very kind of specific. Penguins, you lose a feather or two, you're not waterproof. So penguins actually will go through a period where they gain a lot of weight because they can't go in the ocean, and they get really, really fat, and they literally have roles. We have to take off name tags because their wings are sticking out from their body. And then they kind of, you walk in one day and you have an angry kind of exploded penguin basically, because half of their feathers they'll just drop them. And so they lose all of their feathers at once. It's called a catastrophic molt. And so they just kind of over a period then of 2 to 3 weeks, they will still accept some food, but they tend to not accept as much, and they will regrow all of the new feathers will come in. And once the new feathers are all in, then they can reapply and repreen and stuff and head back into the water. But so they are a really cool kind of molt just because they will be doing it this summer. What?
They have to stay out on the rocks.
Well, they stay out on the rocks. We'll pop a water container out there because they can't go in the water, obviously. But I mean, they're just not as happy when they do it.
How long does it take them to molt?
It takes the whole process about a month.
What does it look like?
So kind of
Not too
from
bad.
weight gain, and we notice this because we mark what they eat.
Yeah.
And that helps us tell if they're going to be sick, if they might be getting ready to lay an egg, if they're going to molt. We watch what they eat. Plus, you can see them. With her, I didn't see hers. With Kristen, who is the one off exhibit, she literally, we were calling her Shamu, which is not the nicest thing in the world, but she was a very, very big girl. And she would kind of do the pregnant waddle down the slope because she just had such a big kind of belly going on. But she also is she's a much bigger penguin than she is. So they do have a very neat little molt. Yeah. Okay. So now we can have, because I don't want you guys to miss the penguin feeding. So you guys are welcome to just kind of walk close. I'm actually probably just going to walk with her if it's not too crazy out there. Otherwise, I'm going to have to put her back in her crate.
They don't look like feathers, though, the back.
That's the thing. They don't
Yeah,
look
they
like
do
feathers.
not
The
look
way
like
they
feathers.
overlap, it
Yeah.
doesn't, especially on